Welcome to Unlock Financial Independence, the #1 financial independence podcast for physical therapists. I am your host, Matt McClanahan. Welcome back, my financially savvy physios. I am your host, Matt McClanahan, here with Unlock Financial Independence. And today we are talking about time. Is it the most precious resource that we have? I definitely think so. So this is a topic that I think is important to start thinking about earlier on in the financial independence path. On your path to generating and keeping more income as you're trying to become financially independent, because it'll help maybe make decisions a little bit easier on maybe what you should spend your money on. And it also will help you decide what's most important in your life. So why should you care about this? Well, time is the most precious resource. Once it's spent, there's no going back. Funny enough, I'm listening to an audiobook right now called Recursion, which is a fantastic book. I recommend listening to it. But it's about this scientist who's wanting to store memories for people who have Alzheimer's, and somehow it ends up making a time machine where they can kind of like go back in time. So it's kind of odd that I'm talking about it, saying that we can't, because as of right now, we can't go back and get any of our time back. But so that's why it is the most precious resource. Once it's spent, you can't get it back. Okay. So two ways to kind of think about this is, and measuring this of your time is both tangible and intangible. We're going to talk about both of those. And I think tangible is kind of the easiest to think about. It's where you know what your time is worth and you can make decisions based on math, right? So intangible is going to be something like spending time with loved ones, things like that. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's talk about the tangible first, okay? So there's actually a great article by James Clear called The Time Value Spectrum, which I will link in the show notes at the bottom here. And it's a little bit more detailed it is definitely more detailed than this podcast, but it might be a little bit more detailed than, say, we need for sake of this discussion regarding financial independence. And it's definitely, his article definitely is a little overkill on it, especially how he decided his time value. That being said, check it out for yourself, see what you think. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. But one real clear thing to think about here is, if I asked you to come into your job every day as a physical therapist and I'll pay you 25 cents per hour, you'd be like, hell no, right? So we know that 25 cents is not is the lowest, right? But if I said I'll pay you $2,500 per hour, you'd probably be like, hell yes, right? So it's pretty easy when we're at those extreme examples of pay that we know what our time is worth, right? But what if I said, okay, I'll pay you $20 an hour or 32 and a half, right? Or what if I paid you 100, right? Then it starts to get a little bit unclear as to what we value our time at. So the article goes over how you can calculate your time value, but here's a quick and dirty way that you're able to do that. So I'll give you actually an example for myself. So last year I was working part-time. So I was working not the whole year, but maybe over 3/4 of it. So I think my after-tax income was somewhere around 50K, something like that. 30 hours per year, or 30 hours per week rather, plus 5 hours of my commuting. So I commute 30 hours or 30 minutes each way. So 1 hour per day. That comes out to about 35 hours of commute plus working. Multiply that by 50 hours or 50 weeks in the year. And I'm assuming that I get like 2 weeks off. And that gives me about 1,750 working hours. Okay. That includes my commute. So if we take my after tax pay, so $50,000, divide that by my total hours worked and commuted. That's about 1,750 working hours. My hourly rate comes out to about $28.60. Okay. So there on James Clear's article, he can definitely get a little bit more granular. And I think the way he does it, I may even have a lower hourly rate than that. But for sake of simplicity, I think there's a quick and dirty way that you can kind of calculate this. So now that we have like a general calculation for myself, $20.60 per hour, how can we use that number to kind of maybe make some decisions, right? So, for example, I purchased a car and it doesn't have a reverse camera. So, one of the things that I wanted to install was a reverse camera. So, I had all the parts and everything like that, Christmas gifts and whatnot. So, really, I just had to pay for the install of this, right? I didn't really know how much it was. I was estimating it, but after I got quoted, it was going to be $200. Okay. So, one way to think about this is if I make $28.60 per hour, that comes out to about I need to work 7 hours in order to pay for this item, right? So if I could do this job in less than 7 hours, then I may just want to do this, right? But if it would take me double that, right? Say it takes me 14 hours in order to install this, well, then the $200 fee to pay to get this installed is so worth it, right? So, I, the way the best thing about this is if I were to have done this myself, I know shit all about cars, right? So I barely know to where to drive to get my oil changed, right? So, getting this rear view camera installed, all that stuff, easily for me, a full day of work, if not more. I may have had to purchase certain parts or tools that I maybe don't have, so extra cost, right? And it'll probably be a pretty sloppy finished product. And the worst case scenario is that I was gonna have to, I'd bring it to the guy anyway to have to do it, right? So a lot of downsides. It could have been a fun learning experience, things like that, but I don't anticipate ever wanting to install a reverse camera or anything like that again. So I dropped my car off, paid this guy, $200, and less than an hour and a half later, he was done. I think it was actually an hour. So in 1 hour, it was $200 worth of work. So I might be like, what the heck? This must have been so simple that I could have done it, right? But no. Think about it this way, right? If I would have spent the 14 hours doing that, that valuation would be so much, it'd be double what I would have paid him just for doing that 1 hour of work. So I hope you can kind of use this tangible way of calculating what your hourly rate is to determine if you think something might be worth the effort or not worth the effort, right? The other thing you could do is determine that if you know what your hourly rate is and something is cheaper than that, and you can pay someone to do a task for you that's cheaper than your hourly rate, you may decide that, oh, it's worth it, right? So, for example, if you hate, I don't know, doing your laundry, right? Is it worth it to you to drop it at a cleaner, get someone to do it weekly for you, and pick it up? Is all of that a time trade-off, right? Because the question you should ask is, what could I be doing with that extra time that it takes me to do my laundry? Or, cleaning your house, get whatever example you want to include here. You may want to consider those options. Now, if you're not going to do if you're just going to relax more with that extra time, that's totally fine, right? You're totally allowed to offload those activities such as laundry, things like that, in order to get more relaxation. But that kind of comes more towards this intangible, like what are what is the intangible time or your time worth, right? But as far as if you're trying to trade your time in order to make more money, such as, for example, someone who is a cash pay clinician may have sitting their laundry somewhere in order to get washed because that extra hour that they're going to be trying to treat patients or they're going to be doing marketing or something like that. Maybe that trade-off is actually worth it to them in the short term, right? So that's a quick and dirty way on how to think about or calculate your tangible time, what it's worth. Okay. Other things that it's really hard to calculate, the intangibles, are, taking the time to go see your loved ones, right? There is a financial cost to that, but what is it worth to spend the weekend with them, right? Or another thing to think about is exploring the world more while you're young, while you may not have kids, right? What is that worth compared to holding down a full-time job right now instead of, taking a travel gig and working a travel gig for 3 months and then taking a month off in order to travel? Like, how you can't really calculate what that intangible value is of seeing the world, right? Another example is, like, for me, I've never snowboarded in my life. I would love to go snowboarding. And so when would I go do that? It's not going to be when I'm in my 50s, 60s, 70s, although I probably could try, but I would have a much better experience when I'm in my maybe 30s or 40s, when I'm younger. Maybe I'm stronger at that point. There's a lot of things that change in your life, especially as you get older. So there's more physically active activities. For my example, such as snowboarding, it may be something that I want to engage in when I'm younger. And so what is that? What is it worth my time trying to go snowboarding now versus later on in my life? So, um, and then, like, doomsday scenarios, like where a family member gets ill and you just need to say, screw it, I'm flying across the country, forget my job. Like, what is that time with them worth compared to worrying about PTO and things like that? Right. So two different ways to kind of think about time in regards to it being a scarce resource and how we can maybe calculate it for certain examples, but as well as how to think about it in terms of, is this worth it? Such as with experiences, time with loved ones, things like that. So, what is this? You're probably asking yourself, what does this have to do with financial independence? The thing that you need to think about is when you have saved enough money where you can work, say, go down to part time or not work at all, this gives you the most time flexibility in the world, right? You have a money buffer that is essentially allowing you to do what you want with your time. Do you want to work on Fridays, or do you want to work past 2 o'clock? You don't have to if you have enough saved up, right? So as early on in the building phase towards financial independence, you may not have those luxuries, but as you stay diligent with your saving and working towards financial independence, you start to be able to get more and more time flexible, right? So if you don't have PTO but you want to be off during Thanksgiving, not a problem when money isn't the driving force behind it, right? You can say, hey, I'll just take, unpaid time off there because it's not a big deal. Money has provided you that ability to be more flexible in your decisions on the things that you want to do with your time, right? So the big thing I want you guys to take away from this, big action items here, think about what you would do if you had more time. Because there's just a lot of misconceptions that if you just save a bunch of money, you're going to have all the free time in the world. You're going to do all these different activities. And sometimes that's not true. That's not the case. So I encourage you to start engaging in those things now, those things that you want to do if you had more time. So maybe you love playing pickup volleyball, sand volleyball, right? Is there a league that you can join playing one night a week now instead of waiting until you have more time? Because you don't want to be stressed by working until 6 and then the league starts at 7 and plays till 9 and then you got to be up at 6 a.m. the next day, right? Holding off on those things now, they might not be worth it in the long run. Think back to that intangible value of your time, right? How much longer are you going to stay young enough to be continuing to play sand volleyball at maybe the level that you want to, right? Not, you can play sand volleyball until you're, 70 or 80, right? As long as you play with the right people, but is it at the level at which you want to be able to play it, right? So, although financial independence might be 10 years off for some of us, you don't want to live a life of deprivation while you're young in order to hit financial independence sooner. So, the almost every person that I've listened to on various podcasts, blogs, you name it, the people that have done that deprivation where they just grind and grind and grind, and then they like wake up and they see their bank account has hit their financial independence number, and then they're like, oh, cool, right? But now they like, yeah, they've made it there, but they all reflect on that experience and wish they would have just taken a little bit of a longer path to enjoy the journey along the way. Okay. Um, so actually a good analogy for this would be the patient that shows up that you know it's going to take 3 to 6 months in order to get things feeling a little bit better. And you're like, you got to enjoy the journey, like put in the work every single day, take the time, like it's gonna get better. That patient versus the one that's like, I want to do this now, so I'm gonna just like hammer, 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 and then like maybe they get better a little sooner, but then they're like, what was the trade-offs with like hammering it every single day, right? So maybe not the best analogy. I'll have to work on that one a little bit, but just think you don't want to live this life of deprivation in order to gain more time freedom later. There's still a lot of life to enjoy right now, even while you're on this path to financial independence. Okay. So an action item for you guys, the listeners here, is think about this. If money weren't an issue or an obstacle and you had all the time that you wanted, what would your day look like? What activities would you engage in? Was that rec leagues, reading clubs, volunteering more? Whatever the answer is, see if you can start doing some of those things now. So if you're like, you know what, when I'm financially independent, I'm going to volunteer more. Well, why wait now, right? There's plenty of organizations that maybe only require you or ask that you're donating an hour or two, one Saturday a month, right? Why wait to get started on those things when you could be doing those now, right? Why wait on joining the recreational leagues that you want to play sports in when you're young and you may be able to like be playing at your peak and feeling like you're physically challenged? There's no reason to wait on that, right? So if money were no issue and you had all the time in the world that you wanted, what would your day-to-day look like? And that's important to consider because that's when you hit financial independence, that's likely what that scenario is going to be. Things do change, don't get me wrong, but it's important to start thinking about that now. Not what don't just think about the goal, money, 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 right? That's the goal is money. Money is a tool that you're using in order to gain freedom to do blank, right? And so you can be doing those things right now in order to live a fulfilling life and a good life while you're on this path to financial independence. Okay. And it's definitely possible. For example, right now I am on the path, right? Everyone that's maybe listening to this is on that path to financial independence, but outside of my employer match account, I haven't been contributing to an investment account. So in one capacity, I feel really bad that I'm not like working as hard as I should be towards that path to financial independence. But the quality of my life has drastically improved so much since pulling back a little bit from work and just trying to live and trying to have a little bit more balance. I'm exercising more now. I'm lifting, I'm running. I have more time to hang out with Steph. So there are a lot of benefits to not making as much money right now. So short term, I guess losses, financial losses, right? Because I'm not working as much, so I'm not making as much, but I'm gaining so much intangible benefit from having just more time in my life. And it's made me feel a lot better about where I'm at. So although I'm not racing towards financial independence like I may want to, I'm enjoying the path along the way. So I hope that was a nice, good, short and sweet podcast for you guys. Really think about that one. I encourage you to head over to the Facebook page in order to post your thoughts on like what you're going to do with more time when you retire. That is the Financial Independence Facebook group for physical therapists. Go ahead and check that out. Join that group. We're going to be talking more about that over there. I hope to see you guys there, and I'll catch you on the next one.